Today, Venezuela is accusing the United States of barefaced robbery and piracy following the seizure of an oil tanker off the country's coast. President Trump, though, isn't about to apologize.
Large tanker, very large. Largest one ever seized, actually. And other things are happening, so you'll be seeing that later. It was seized for a very good reason.
What happens to the oil on that ship?
Well, we keep it, I guess.
Attorney General Pam Bondi also posted this video of an elite group from the U.S. Coast Guard dropping from a helicopter to the ship's deck. The New York Times reports there was no resistance from the crew and no casualties. That's according to 3 U.S. officials. Peter Baker is chief White House correspondent for the New York Times and an MS Now contributor. Richard Haass is president emeritus at the Council on Foreign Relations and senior counselor at Centerview Partners. Good to see you guys. Richard, when Republican Senator Rand Paul heard about the tanker, he said, "It sounds a lot like the beginning of a war." Could he be right?
Look, he could be. What this is the ratcheting up of pressure on the Maduro regime in Venezuela. The question is, how do they react? And if they don't basically say uncle, either with policy changes or agree to give up power, then I assume the administration will continue to ratchet up pressure. Could be by seizing more tankers. At some point, it could involve the use of military force. The only problem with all this is it leaves the initiative, if you will, with the government of Venezuela, because they have to decide when they've had enough.
Peter, is there any indication the president is willing to have some kind of negotiation with Nicolas Maduro?
Yeah, I mean, look, Trump is one of these people who is very flexible when it comes to these kinds of things. He can have a very bombastic, confrontational relationship with you one day and then get on the phone or schedule a meeting the next. Look at how he threatened Kim Jong-un in his first term in North Korea with an apocalyptic-like attack and then ended up meeting with him and declaring that they had, exchanged love letters and so forth. So it's always conceivable. With Trump, you can never be sure. He's expressed interest in having a conversation with Maduro. But that doesn't mean it's actually going to happen, and that doesn't mean that's going to happen anytime soon. I think that at this point, they do seem to be on a path toward further confrontations, Richard just said. And why did they release the pictures that you showed earlier from Pam Bondi's social media account? Because they want those pictures out there. They want that impression of American force, American. That doesn't necessarily mean that Americans want to go to war with Venezuela, and that's a different question, right? Putting pressure on Venezuela is one thing. An actual war, which Trump has sort of suggested he might be willing to do, given that he had been the champion of getting out of endless wars and not using military force to change regimes in the Middle East. That's a whole different question, I think.
Yeah, and Richard, we should say specifically what Trump said as he threatened Colombia's leader. Take a listen.
Colombia is producing a lot of drugs. They have cocaine factories that they make cocaine, as you know, and they sell it right into the United States. So he better wise up, or he'll be next. He'll be next, too. And I hope he's listening. He's going to be next.
I hope he's listening. He's going to be next. I think Peter put it right. He sort of suggests things or implies things. But what about the implications of all of this widening?
What we're on is something of a collision course between an administration that has made the U.S. presence in Latin America and the Western Hemisphere a much higher national security priority, is willing to use military force towards that end, as we've seen it not just with the tanker, but with the more than 20 boats that have been attacked. Now he's threatening the leaders of Colombia. And this is going to provoke, shall we say, nationalist, anti-American pushback. So we'll just have to see how this plays out. I find that one interesting thing, Chris, this will not be well received in Latin America, even people who want to see Maduro go, this kind of American heavy-handedness. The place that's going to be well received is in Russia and in China. Because what it sends is the message that we feel free to do whatever we want in our backyard, in our part of the world. And they're going to say, great, so long as we can do the same where we live.
New information about the oil tanker that was seized by the U.S. off the coast of Venezuela. Satellite imagery and shipping data obtained by CNN show it concealed its true location while docked at a Venezuelan oil terminal last month. Its transponder indicated it was hundreds of kilometers away in Guyana. U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi released a video of U.S. military personnel seizing the ship in what marks a major escalation. President Donald Trump's move against Venezuela's president and its government. Bondi says the tanker has been under U.S. sanctions for years for involvement in an illicit oil shipping network. Venezuela's government calls the seizure an act of international piracy. Its president appeared unfazed.
Don't worry, be happy.
Okay, I can hear myself, guys. All right, President Nicolas Maduro singing "Don't Worry, Be Happy" at a rally Wednesday, telling CNN his message to the U.S. is peace above all else. We've got Elena Treen collecting us from the White House, and Stefano Pozzebon is in Venezuela's capital of Caracas. Elena, I want to start off with you. President Trump was asked what they'll do with the oil, and here's what he had to say.
The oil on that ship.
Well, we keep it, I guess.
Where does it go? What port does it go to?
Well, you have to follow the tanker. You know, you're a good newsman. Just follow the tanker.
Do you know where it's going?
Follow it. Get a helicopter and follow the tanker.
Is it true it's going to
But we're
Cuba?
gonna. I assume we're gonna keep the oil.
So, Elena, Venezuelan oil is sanctioned, but around 27 million barrels per month reach international markets, particularly China. So how does President Trump plan to crack down on oil exports and, I guess, importantly, because this is his effort, to try and squeeze Maduro and his earnings?
Yeah, I mean, this is a significant escalation, Eleni, of the United States pressure campaign on Maduro. But from talking to legal experts and people throughout the administration here, they argue that this is, of course, very different, a different mission from what we've seen. Some of the other strikes, particularly on, the 2 dozens, I should say, strikes that they've had on those boats traveling throughout the Caribbean and off the coast of Venezuela. Look, I think that video last night, Eleni, that the Attorney General Pam Bondi shared of these U.S. personnel rappelling down off of that helicopter, seizing that tanker with their guns drawn. I mean, those are remarkable images we're getting. We were told that this was namely a U.S. Coast Guard mission that was working in conjunction with the FBI, Homeland Security, and the Department of Defense. Now, what I found interesting was actually word of this surprise mission actually came from the president himself. Listen.
Our message to the people of the United States remains the same.
As you probably know, we've just seized a tanker on the coast of Venezuela. Large tanker, very large. Largest one ever seized, actually. And other things are happening.
Now, look, the president said that he essentially had very good reason, the U.S. had very good reason for seizing this tanker, but he didn't really offer many details about why they did this and what to expect moving forward, as you played, Eleni, in that clip earlier of him saying, he doesn't really know what they're going to do with the oil that was in transport on that tanker. He said, I guess we'll keep it. Now, what's interesting is that the tanker named Skipper, it was sanctioned by the Biden administration back in 2022 for what they had said was Venezuela trying to transport this oil to Iran. And experts tell us from our conversations that this was a legally justified by the book mission. They note that the fact that the Coast Guard were the ones that were involved in this makes it very different from those strikes I was mentioning earlier that have killed 87 people or so on those boats that the Trump administration has alleged were carrying drugs. But I think big picture here, which is important to keep in mind, is this is a very different mission. It is definitely an escalation of the president trying to squeeze the Venezuelan dictator. But it's unclear really how this fits into that broader strategy of what the administration is saying, which is to try and really stop the flow of drugs into the United States. We also know, of course, that there is another goal in mind that they're not trying to publicly promote, but is to try and see Maduro be ousted from power. And
have to like Maduro, but he's right. Venezuela is right. Their legal system is right. Their government is right here. Donald Trump committed an act of international piracy. Right? We don't have to mince words here. The United States under Donald Trump, and frankly under other points in history, is a rogue criminal country sometimes, doing all of the things that it accuses Iran of doing and Venezuela of doing and whatever enemy du jour the United States has, right? And under Trump, it's only gotten more blatant. Again, I gave the example. Donald Trump is literally a convicted felon. Donald Trump has been credibly accused of violating international law, right? And yet, if Scotland seized his golf course, or if, another country seized his properties, some of his hotels and resorts that exist in other countries, if they seized his bank accounts that he might have in Europe or what have you, or they seized resources from the Trump organization, or they freeze the assets of Trump's children or whatnot who have, businesses in other countries, the United States would call it, they would scream bloody murder, right? And so none of this means you have to defend Maduro. You can think Maduro is awful, but fundamentally, the United States is doing something that they would never accept being done to them. They would never accept it. Right? Imagine if the other countries bought the big lie and started freezing Joe Biden's assets, being like, oh, yeah, we support. Imagine if they did that. They didn't, though. Imagine if, though. And to flip it, Americans would never tolerate that. Americans have done that to other countries, though. So keep all of this in mind. The judicial system and legal system in Venezuela does not support this. This is illegal. And under international law, what Trump did, it's just theft. 100%. So Donald Trump is making America, even more than before, an international pariah, showing that the United States does not actually respect the ideals it has, or at least pretends to have, unless those ideals benefit them in the moment. And Donald Trump, he just ripped the mask off the United States.